Hey YouTube, how's it going? It's Rob Avis here. We are live today with Curtis Stone. We're going to be talking about urban farming, and I'm really excited to have this podcast. Curtis is not only a colleague, but has been a close friend for the last 10 years. And so not only am I a huge fan of his book, but I've been a huge fan of his work, and I've watched him grow from, I remember back in the early days, when he was still double digging his beds by hand, and watch the evolution from that all the way up until to where he is right now. Gardening perennially in passive solar greenhouses and innovating new tools with BCS tractors. A really long progressive arc over the last 10 years and lots of experience to draw on. So today's conversation is going to be really interesting. But before I bring Curtis on, I want to talk a little bit about this series. So we call this series Ideas on the Verge. As a result of writing our rainwater harvesting book, we ended up working pretty closely with New Society over the last 2 years and really enjoyed our collaboration and tried to find new ways that we could continue to collaborate with New Society by interviewing some of the most incredible authors out there that are in their wheelhouse. And so twice a month, we interview thought leaders within the regenerative ag and permaculture space on this channel. So you guys can get an insight and ask them questions about what they're thinking about and how they're thinking about the world, and how to position yourself based on all the insights and research and intellectual ideas that they've had. And so it's been a really great partnership with New Society. And on that note, I want to just introduce Sarah Reeves, who's the marketing director from New Society Publishers, to talk a little bit about New Society and what makes them such a great publisher. We certainly have really enjoyed working with them. And if you're thinking about writing a book, you'll want to consider collaborating with New Society. They've been an absolute joy to work with. So Sarah, why don't you tell us a little bit about New Society Publishers?
Okay, well, thank you for that, Rob, and hello, Curtis, and Happy New Year to everybody. We're really excited to be here. For those of you who don't know yet, New Society, we're an activist solutions-oriented publisher. We pride ourselves on walking our talk and having the highest environmental and social standards of any publisher in North America. So this includes things like we print on 100% post-consumer recycled paper. We print in North America only, never overseas. We've also been a carbon neutral company since 2006. And our employees are shareholders in the company. So the employees own a third of the company. And we're also a certified B Corporation. So if you want to find out more, you can check out our website or any of our other social sites. And, we're thrilled to be able to collaborate with Verge Permaculture on this project. I really think that the sharing of ideas and information on as many platforms as possible is key to creating community and real change in the world. I want to give a shout out to all of our authors for their willingness to share their often hard-won knowledge and expertise with readers and listeners alike. It can really be comforting when you're embarking on a new project or contemplating new ideas that are sometimes challenging, to know that someone's been through it before you and can help you walk through it and help you miss many of the potholes that may reveal themselves along the way. So thank you to our authors and to Verge, Rob and Michelle, and to Curtis for joining us today.
Thanks so much, guys. So Kurt, why don't you, I could introduce you, but I think why don't you talk a little bit about, let's start right at the beginning. Like what was it that got you into urban farming? What was the thing that made you switch? You were one of these guys that did a complete 180. And so maybe start there. What were you doing before you started urban farming, and then what got you to consider this form of livelihood?
Well, I was grinding in Montreal, trying to be like a professional musician, trying to make a living at that, and that was tough. That was a tough grind. And there's a lot to that. Maybe people won't really find that interesting. I actually don't really find that interesting either anymore. But I was getting really burnt out on that lifestyle, late nights, touring on the road, not making real money from it, which as you get older is tough because we all have bills to pay. And so that became tough. But also I didn't really feel like I was part of the solution at that time. And, my worldviews have changed a lot since I've actually become a farmer. But at that time, I really felt like, you know, if you're not part of the solution, you're part of the problem. And, you know, here I am, this guy who's partying all the time, doing drugs, and I have all these opinions, like most sort of liberal college students do, about how the world is and how it ought to be. And I looked at myself and was like, well, what the hell am I doing about it? I'm, you know, partying and touring and eating Cheetos in a van full of guys and one girl, and not really, you know, doing anything. And so I kind of got tired of that. And when the 2008 recession started, you know, I was in Montreal, and I remember we had this freezing rainstorm at that time. And, you know, if you live out east, you know what this is all about. But for those that don't, it is quite a weather anomaly. You know, you get this warm rain that comes in when it's minus 30 or 40, and it freezes on contact to everything. And it was like the apocalypse. And I really took that as a sign, as in like, wow, man, we're so fragile. Our whole living systems are so fragile. And, you know, there was sort of a 2 or 3 day period there where the trucks really couldn't get into the city. There was so much gridlock traffic, and you really actually physically saw less produce and grocery items on the store shelves. And it really made me think, like, in a very visceral sense, like, look how fragile this is. If the trucks stop coming, people will starve. And I didn't really want to be in Montreal anymore. I was kind of getting tired of it. And so I went on a path of discovery. I was inspired by a tree planting friend of mine, and I'd done tree planting like for 9 years up to this point. And that's how I funded my lifestyle as a musician. So I didn't really have to work much when I lived in Montreal, though I did, but not much. And I was inspired by this guy I met who rode his bike down through the US, and I wanted to do that. So I moved back to BC, which is where I was originally from. Just kind of parked there. I just parked my stuff at my mom's house, got on a bike, loaded up with gear, and rode down to Mexico, basically, just going through on the U.S. coast. And I visited eco villages and homesteads and off-gridders, and just kind of excited about what I saw, and that there were possibilities to live in a way that was least impactful on the planet, and also had a net benefit to people around you. And you know, you could make a living at it too. I didn't see a lot of that while I was down there. I did visit one urban farmer when I was in Santa Rosa, but that just kind of got me thinking about all this stuff and possibilities. And when I got back, when I finished that tour, I spent just about 3 months doing it. When I got back to Canada, I just wanted to get into something, and I wanted to start farming. And I didn't really care about the details. I just felt empowered that I had made this, like, you know, epic move to ride my bike 3,000 kilometers. And I'm like, if I can do that, I could do something. So I figured, why don't I just start farming on land I don't own? And so I heard about this guy named Wally Satsowich in Saskatchewan who was farming on backyards. And I just took the plunge and just did what he did, and it worked. And, you know, that basically gets us to year one of my farming. And then I've evolved this, and it's gone in directions that I never imagined. And that's kind of where we are now.
So talk to me about why, and I remember some of these early conversations, but for people that weren't privy to the conversations that you and I had, and you contemplated for a long time actually buying rural land and farming, mm-hmm. and decided it was a bad idea in those early years. For lots of reasons. Talk to me a little bit about how, like, that thought process, why you settled in on urban farming, and how, like, what is the core model of your business as an urban farmer, and how does that relate to kind of the conventional approach of either buying or leasing rural land, and doing it on that scale?
Well, you know, my opinions on land have changed, as you know, you and I talk a lot. We're pretty close friends. You know, I was looking at buying land last year, and so I've kind of gone full circle. Actually, I'm kind of back to where I was. But I started,
but initially, you didn't have the resources that you've got right now.
Exactly, and I'll speak to that. I mean, really, what it was about was, by leasing land or borrowing people's backyards, it was a way that I could start farming now with limited resources. So it was a low barrier to entry. And I think that's why my model's been so popular, is that it's enabled a lot of people who are sort of green dreamers who want to do this stuff, but haven't found the means to do it. Because there's a lot of resources you need to start a farm on land. Like, it isn't just the the purchase price. You've got to install water. You've got to build roads, access ways, infrastructure, like, buildings and post-harvest structures and all that. There's a lot to building a farm on land. And I've done a lot of that in my consulting practices. But back, when I was starting out, it was just an easy way to get in the game. And so I'm glad that I did, because the one thing that people overlook the fact that there are many forms of capital. You and I have riffed on this a lot, but one of the most undervalued forms of capital is experience and knowledge and the skills that you build by just getting started. And I'm so grateful for the fact that I just became a person of action and just did it without wanting to have the perfect scenario. I just went and did it, because then I started building skills, and then I could leverage those skills to take me into places that I never thought possible. And that's kind of where I am today. Is like, I could buy land if I wanted to, but I got into it last year and I realized, I don't know if I want to build a big farm at this point in my career.
Yeah, totally. So you started off, you said, with spin farming and Wally and his system. And again, because I've known you for so long, you are probably one of the most pernicious systems-oriented people that I know. You just systematize. And I'm assuming that as a result of having that initial seed idea or some of those systems that Wally had pioneered, that got you started, but you've since evolved your own methodologies. Do you want to talk a little bit about how that evolution emerged?
Yeah. I've got nothing but love for the spin farming guys, Wally and Roxanne, and they really helped me when I started out. The thing, I guess, with spin was I was helping them promote spin back then, and it was early on, because I kind of got into public speaking the year, like after my first year of farming, because they approached me, and I found there was just a lot of things that were missing in detail in their content, and I wanted to provide that, because I just wanted people to do what I was doing, because I felt like it was something that was empowering to many people who might have been out of a job and were just doing things that they hated and wanted to find something with purpose that was, actually a reasonable living that they could make. And so I just kind of started going at the weak links, and there was things like there wasn't information about really how to build a post-harvest structure. There wasn't a lot of detail on how to succession crop, like in the season, how to, think about secondary and third cuts from beds of greens. And there wasn't really a lot of marketing information about, like, how to approach customers and how to build a business and all that. And so I learned those things just by doing them. And I had a lot of great mentors along my way. And so those were the kind of things I wanted to write about, because I just felt there was such a demand for that information. And I found that when I was teaching actual spin farming, when I was teaching their method, the questions I got the most of were those ones. And so when I wrote my book, that was essentially my strategy, is just go at the things that nobody else has touched. And so that's why in my book, I don't talk about how to make compost. I don't talk about how to build good soil. There's so many, I do a little bit, but there's so many good books about that already. I just felt like, why repeat the same thing over and over again? I find it something in the market gardening space with authors is quite annoying that every book, the first chapter is on compost. It's like, how many chapters do we need on compost? So I just wanted to go at the weak links, and I think it's worked for me.
So up until, was it 3 or 4 years ago, you were farming on land and none of which you owned, I believe, right?
That's right.
Yeah. And so what kind of, how did those lease agreements look for you?
Well, there was a variety of them, actually. There was traditional leases, like written, in writing with legalese, and, payment structures, some of them monthly payments, some of them yearly payments, applications to the ALR and stuff like that. I've done all that, which is a total hassle. I don't want to side rail too much, but I can't stand the ALR. It's a guy in BC who's a young farmer. The whole program is missed the mark on trying to get people into farming. It creates some weird disincentives, actually. But so I'd kind of with that. And then, then just a lot of just handshake deals, just a lot of deals built on character, where, you look in the person's eye and you shake their hand and you decide if they're trustworthy or not. I definitely had a couple, maybe just two. I've been on over 20 different leases. Two that one was kind of sour and one was just didn't go that well. But other than that, my intuition has served me pretty well with it. My dad taught me how to read people when I was young, and I think it kind of helped me in that. But one thing I can pull from all that is and one thing to convey to people is, if you're gonna get into a lease, especially if it's on a larger piece of land and you're gonna be putting infrastructure on that land, like greenhouses or anything that's like semi-permanent to permanent, if you're gonna be pouring concrete or anything like that, pounding steel, you want to get things in writing. You want to really dot your I's and cross your T's, and also make sure you're in an arrangement with somebody that you actually like and that you can imagine seeing every day of the week for, 365 days of the year.
Yep. So after 10 years, lots of tinkering, lots of experimentation, lots of empirical results. What's the maybe give me a range. What's the minimum size of urban farm? What's the maximum size of urban farm? Maybe there isn't a maximum. I don't know. I suspect there is a minimum.
Oh, there's definitely a maximum.
Okay.
I don't know if there's a minimum. Yeah. If you want to be, it all depends on your context. So let's just assume we're talking about things that are commercially viable. Mm-hmm. If you want to get into microgreens, you can literally start making a living on 50 square feet or less. And then you can just turn up the dial by just adding more blocks of shelving and lighting. But if you, there you can go as small as you want, really. If you want to get into field production and you want to grow field crops, so things in the soil outside, I would say it's probably, if you do a mixed system, and I read about this in the book too. I kind of give these models of examples that have worked that I'd tried myself and that I'd also seen tried or done. If you want to just growing field crops with no microgreens, I would say you can't really be smaller than a quarter acre. That would be probably bare minimum. But if you have some microgreen production that kind of gets you through the winter, you might have a heated up greenhouse, or you might have like an indoor nursery or something with shelving. Then you could get it smaller. You could maybe even be down to 1/10 of an acre. As far as large, how big you can go, market gardening in general. So when I say market gardening, what I'm talking about is what people like Elliot Coleman, Jean-Martin Fortier, and myself have helped pioneer, which is commercial farming without the use of a tractor. We're using hand tools and small machinery like, a BCS or something like that. In my opinion, now, having visited hundreds of farms in 5 different countries, I would say to go more than 6 acres on a market garden, you might as well just get into tractor farming, because you're going to be transporting around too much. You're going to need machinery just to move things around. And you can see this a lot if you go to Jean-Martin Fortier's new farm, Le Ferme des Quatre Étapes. It's 6 acres, and I think it's the max. I could be wrong with that, but that's just my opinion as it is right now. I couldn't imagine doing a market garden bigger than 6 acres. And so, in regards to urban, that could be urban if you could find 6 acres in an urban setting. Maybe not a high density urban area like Boston or New York, but certainly something like, a town in Canada, like, Kitchener or Guelph or something like that, or maybe some of the town, even maybe a town like Kelowna, you could find land like that relatively close to the city. That could still technically be urban.
Totally. So let's talk a little bit about money. Like we've talked about large and small scale there. What's the kind of range of expectation in terms of? And I totally get that every market's different. There's different different populations have different amounts of affluence, but in terms of financial output for these types of models, can you give me a range of possibilities? Let's think about three models that are top of mind for you, and kind of what that looks like.
Yeah, one thing you'll notice, or one thing that if somebody were to have to kind of run the gamut of different scales of farming, you'll find is that your dollar per square foot goes down the larger you go. So what happens is, on the smaller farm, you're going to have a higher dollar net return per square foot, but that means you're going to have to specialize in some kinds of crops because, if you're farming on a quarter acre, to grow 80 different crops is an absolute waste of time. You're not going to make any real money doing that. You're just going to spend a lot of time. But, we're talking about direct consumer markets, right? The whole market gardening space is about direct consumer marketing. So, selling at farmers markets, selling to restaurants, filling CSA boxes and stuff like that. So generally what happens is the smaller you are, the more niche you are, the less products you have and the less types of customers you have, but the more dollar per square foot you can make. And then the more you grow, the more you diversify into different markets and products. And then you make less per square foot, but you make more overall. So the possibilities are, on our quarter acre, we've done over 100,000. I think our best year was 110,000 gross. So that meant that myself as the owner operator working full-time on the farm, I'm taking 50 to 60,000 net return. So that's my wage for working 40 hours a week. And then I'm paying, one semi full-time person a really good salary. Like my main guy, Mark, was getting $20 an hour. And so, and then there's a little bit left over to start the next season. So maybe 10 grand to start the next season for seed and upfront costs. And then, we certainly leverage credit cards a little bit if we wanted to buy new tools, but all those things are paid off. Like we never carried debt on the farm for more than a month. And then as you get into larger farms, one real medium-sized farm, really great example of like just absolute crushing it model is Steadfast Farm down in Arizona, in Mesa, Arizona. They're on a lease, so they're technically an urban farm too. They're right in the town. They're on 1.5 acres. They're doing 300,000 gross on 1.5 acres. They really have their systems dialed in. They've got a little bit more crop diversity than Green City Acres would. A little bit more customer diversity too. A lot more restaurants. They do a CSA. They do 3 farmers markets a week. They do all of that with 4 full-time people. So that's really good. Now you can scale up. You can go to something like Jean Martin's new farm model, which isn't necessarily, it's had a billionaire fund it. So it's not, you can't really look at the capital investments and go and look at the return. But just if you look at the production numbers, they're getting close to $1 million on that. And I don't think that would be necessary. You wouldn't necessarily have to have all of their infrastructure to do those kinds of numbers. You could totally lean it out. They just happen to have a sort of Rockefeller type guy who wants to pay for everything and is willing for them to get the latest and greatest of all the equipment. So that's kind of the scale you're looking at. You can go, and if you really look at that all down per square foot, you'll see that it downtrends the bigger you go. But your overall gross will be higher the bigger you go. Right.
So let's talk a little bit about finding the right site. Like if somebody's wanting to get started and kind of mimic the models that you've produced in your book here. This is the book we're talking about today, The Urban Farmer. And you'll notice all the tabs in here. There's tons of incredible content in here. Chapter 4 really details out what is involved in finding the right site. So what are the characteristics that you look for in site selection if you're going to be, farming off your current property?
Yeah, there's a lot of them actually. I think in the book, it's been a long time since I looked at that book, but I think there's 10, something like that. The first thing is really, is character, is like looking for the right person, the right relationship. Relationships are paramount to everything. And so you really got to have a person that you can imagine seeing every day, however often you're going to that plot. In an urban context, it's really important to think about what your surroundings are. So what's the shade around? You might have a building on the south side that for 6 months of the year is casting a long shadow into that plot. So you can only use that plot during the summer, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I've certainly done it, but these are considerations. One thing a grower can do that's very foundational to many other enterprises within agriculture is just understand where the sun moves, is thinking about where is the sun? And you can get apps to do this too, but I find there's a lot of value in just kind of knowing it intuitively. But knowing where your sun tracks at your winter solstice, your spring equinox, your summer solstice, and your fall equinox, understanding where that tracks, because then you can basically stand anywhere and imagine, oh, geez, you know what? In the morning, in the springtime, this is going to be in shade until 10 a.m. That really sucks, because your morning sun is really, really important, especially on the colder seasons, because you want to get that soil warm. If it stays cold too long, it's going to inhibit your crop growth. So there's things like shade structures. There's things like invasive weeds. Like, what are the invasive weeds in your area? Are any of them in that plot? If there are, is it possible to mitigate them, or is it so bad that it's just a no-go? And I've certainly turned down many pieces of land where I've gone and seen there's just so much Canadian thistle or bindweed, which are the worst two weeds a farmer in Canada and most of North America can deal with. I just walk away. Other things too, like, what are the neighbors doing around you? Do you have a guy next door who's spraying a lot of Roundup in his yard? Is he out there with a pump sprayer spraying little weeds every now and then? That might be something that people would be considering detrimental, especially if they want to claim they're organic. What else is there? I mean, yeah, trees are huge, not only for shade, but also for the root structures. Sometimes that can be a big drag on a plot. If you got a walnut tree too close, it can suck a lot out of your plot. If your neighbor has a cedar hedge too, something like that. Also, just the kind of community it is, like what the neighborhood is like, who's around you. I've definitely had some plots in some rough neighborhoods, and I didn't stay there because it just wasn't nice to be there. And on the other side, I still have plots in really nice neighborhoods that I love going to all the time because I like the people. So people are a really big thing for me. Another thing too is that's really important for urban farms is like visibility. And this is a benefit that urban farms have that other farmers don't, is that the visibility of your plot, meaning that if there's a lot of people walking by day in and day out and they're seeing the plot and they're asking, hey, what's going on? This is really cool. That's marketing. That's selling you. That's selling your what you're doing. And so those things have been, the marketing thing is probably the biggest one there, really. But those are some of the main ones I can think off the top of my head that are really important.
You've got a sprouting urban farmer right behind you there.
Yeah, I got a cameo in the background.
Nice one. And she's on a push bike. That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the coolest things about watching over the last 10 years has been, and you kind of mentioned this, like the fact that you started, which I think is super valuable. And a lot of us get stuck at that point. And then all of the other value streams that have started to emerge out of the farming. And I'm specifically talking about the fact that you're now at a place with the experiential capital that you've built, that you're actually innovating on tools now. You want to talk about some of the tools that you've contributed to the urban farming world and kind of where that space is going?
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of came out of just using them so much. I remember when I first got the quick cut greens harvester, and I was annoyed by a couple of things. I mean, I was grateful that it was made and I liked it, but I was annoyed by a couple of things. And I eventually started talking to Jonathan over at Farmer's Friend, and we became friends. And we started just to share ideas, and got to a point where, they were flying me down to Tennessee to basically just talk shop with them and contribute to tools ideas. And I'd done that quite a bit with a number of companies, actually. BCS, I helped innovate. It was my idea to create what's called the PDR, the Precision Depth Roller. That was my idea. I was in Portland, actually at a Mother Earth News event. Well, it was in Albany, but I went up to Portland to go hang out with the people at BCS. And I basically gave them the idea. I said, here's a cheaper way to make a power harrow that you can sell for cheaper, and it's leaner because it's two implements in one. And so I've done that a lot actually with companies, so much so that I just decided to start my own company. So Diego Footer, who's a mutual friend of ours, we all kind of met through Diego, actually, because Diego was running the Permaculture Voices conference. was that 5 or 6 years ago now, we all kind of started hanging out there and really taking our work seriously and networking and all that. So Diego and I have done a lot of things together over the years. We had a whole podcast series that ran for 2 years called The Urban Farmer. Done a number of his podcasts with Permaculture Voices, and we've collaborated on a lot of events and stuff. He's booked tours for me in California. We basically just decided to start selling our own tools. So we discovered this amazing tool called the paper pot transplanter that's 40 years old from Japan, and nobody was really using it. A few people here and there. And I got one, made a video about it. It went viral, 60 million views on Facebook. And we just basically bought a shipping container from Japan and started selling just out of Vista, California. And we had a business pretty much overnight. And that's grown a lot. And so we are selling different types of tools. We're inventing tools now. We've got a bunch of stuff in the wheelhouse now that we're working on. We're doing some of our own manufacturing. We're doing plastic injection molding and making parts. And we got a guy here in Kelowna that's doing fabrication for us. And so it's gone to a place that I never thought. And actually, it's really cool because I'm taking a break from farming for a year. I told that to my YouTube audience earlier this winter. Just got so many other irons in the fire now, especially being a family guy. I just don't want to compromise my this precious time with my daughter. And so I've decided to just take a break from farming and focus on these other things that I can do from home. And when I do travel, they come with me. So yeah, we're running the tools company. We're inventing new stuff. And yeah, it's been awesome.
You've often said that the urban farming space is just ripe for innovation, and that
Yes.
there's really no upper limit to kind of where this niche can go. I don't know if you want to speak to that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, it's urban farming. It's also just market gardening in general.
Gardening, right.
It's just, there's just so much opportunity in it. One thing I've probably changed my viewpoint on in the last year or two is I don't really have, I used to have this illusion that market gardening would revolutionize agriculture, in that, we would see industrial agriculture collapse, and then you'd have all these small scale transition town type farms kind of take over. I don't believe that's going to happen. I don't believe industrial agriculture is going to go away anytime soon. I just think robots will all be doing it. The niche that market gardening fills, in my opinion now, and my like I said, my opinions changed on this last couple of years, just from traveling so much and seeing, all these growers, is it's more of an opportunity for people to craft a sustainable lifestyle for themselves, in that you can work from home. You can grow your own food. You can have your family together as a unit working on the land. And I think there's so much beauty in that. I don't think it's about saving the world from climate change. I don't think it's any of these massive issues that we always hear about in the news. I think it's really just about an opportunity for people to make a good living doing something that is meaningful and really allows a person to have a traditional family. And I think that's important. And so I think the opportunities are in that there are millions of people dying for that opportunity. They're begging and screaming for that opportunity because they're working desk jobs that they hate. They're never outside. They're inside all day. They go to an office. They're away from their kids and their spouse, and they're burnt out. And I think, especially in Western culture, there are, we've benefited from, 100 years of state capitalism, whatever you want to call it, where we have an abundance of resources. And so this isn't necessarily a movement of agrarianism or out of necessity versus starvation, though it could be. It's more about people choosing to live a different way. And I just see that through hundreds of my consulting, is that often the people I'm consulting for, most often, they're career professionals who made good money and they just don't like what they do and they want to do something else and they're happy to make less money, but they can actually make that choice. And that's a Western thing, right? Like that doesn't exist in poor countries. In poor countries, people want to make more money to get out of poverty, and all the power to them. And that's not to say that these types of things can't work in poor countries, because they certainly have. I have students in places like the Philippines and Malaysia, and I just was talking to a guy in Thailand. No, in Laos a few weeks ago. And so, you know, it can work anywhere, but here it seems to be the biggest opportunities are there, and that there's just so much demand for that. And it's following the trend of people kind of wanting to get back to something simple. It's somewhat reflective of the back to lander, you know, the hippie movement of the 60s, but I think it has maybe a little bit less illusions of or delusions of grandeur, maybe, like we can go in this commune and all just live off the land. It's not so much that radical. It's not so that radical.
So going back to the beginning and then going right back to present day, what in your book, in your opinion, after thinking about this for the last decade, what is in your book from your perspective as an urban farmer that you wish that you had at the beginning?
That's in my book
Yeah.
that I wrote about, that I wish I had when I started.
Yeah.
Are you looking for something like tangible or just like advice?
I mean, let's just keep it to three things, and I'm going to seed you with an idea, because I've heard you talk a lot about this. How you do a lot of consulting, and the majority of the time when you show up at these places, it's Talebian, via negativa, you know,
Right.
Pareto's type stuff. There, like, I know that when you first started, it was like a smorgasbord, and as you kind of you worked through, like, there was a lot of learnings in that, and I'm sure there's at least two other domains within your business that, you know, if you could go back to Curtis 10 years ago and give him advice, you know, the book is so full of systems and business models, and I mean, crop planning and production systems. There's so much in there. We only have an hour to talk about it, but what are the top three pieces in this book that you wish you could have told yourself 10 years ago?
Definitely trim the fat. That's the first thing. It's like understanding the Pareto distribution and the Pareto principle, and just going with that 20%. And that's just, you know, that's nothing new in business, especially in the online marketing space, which I'm heavily involved in. It's just niching, right? It's just going at these niches. And there's a lot of correlations between online marketing and selling at a farmer's market or being a market grower, is that you are in a niche market. Like, you're not feeding the world. You're going at a premium customer, and you're selling a premium product, and it's just being real about that. And just the faster you can accept that, and the faster you'll be happy. Because a lot of people just try to save the world every day, and they just end up poor and burnt out. And I just say that through hundreds of hours of consulting and solving these problems, particularly for nonprofits. Yes, sweetie. Another one would be just keep things really simple. Don't overcomplicate things. Always do less. Like you know, you think you want to go at this many customers, just go at half, and just try to provide value the best you can to those ones. Make them happy. Have some successes that way before you take on other stuff. Another thing that is actually not in the book that I'll probably put in something else later is cut distractions. Is just, you know, this is one thing I've found. People are really obsessed over social media and things like that today. And I just find people are wasting so much time on it, and it's preventing them from really getting things done. Hey, what's that? You gonna water the garden? Here, I'll put some water in that for you.
Yeah, those are really wise words.
I'd say those three right now, you know, like, there you go. That would be three things I wish I would have known.
Awesome. One more question, and then we're going to open it up to questions for folks. So if you guys are wanting to ask Curtis some questions, by all means, get them up in the chat window there. We're going to be giving a free copy of this book away at the end of the show. And you should also know that if you're on our email list, you get a 25% discount for the next 48 hours if you want to end up getting this book. So put your questions up into the chat window right now, and we'll circle around and grab those here at the end. So I'm pretty sure your book is one of the best sellers in New Society's wheelhouse. And I know you get a lot of emails from people that have read it and people that have taken your programs. I'm curious if they've told you what their most important nuggets are and what those would be in the emails that you're getting.
It's funny, actually. Most stuff is sort of the personal stuff. Like, the details are there, like how to do certain things. Those are certainly valuable to people, but I find the stuff that resonates with people the most are things about basically just giving people pep talk. And that's like the first, anytime I can consult for somebody, that's what the first part of the conversation is. I mean, first is getting to understand what their situation is and what they're doing. But then the next is just basically pumping them up to be like, stop having hesitations, stop overthinking it, just do it. Just start. That's actually the number one. That's the biggest thing. Like, people who email me every day, they say, your words just kind of kicked me in the ass to just get started and stop doubting myself and just go for it. And that's what I hear every day, it's awesome to hear. I never get tired of hearing that. It's so cool to hear people like, do it. I'm so excited to hear success stories of people just changing their lives and empowering themselves and helping their families and finding some happiness in something so simple like growing food.
Right. So I have two more questions for you. You offer some of your best digital tools as well as an addendum to this book. Can you talk a little bit about those?
Yeah. It's basically, they're quite old, it's been around for a while now, but the information's still good. That's why it's still there. It's basically a little digital thing you can buy. It's just like a zip file of videos and some updated spreadsheets. And they're basically videos just explaining how I use the spreadsheets and how I do some microgreen stuff in there. There's some presentations in there. It's just some extra stuff. What the strategy was I want to offer something that you can't get on Amazon. And I've gone to many Mother Earth news fairs where all these other, either Chelsea Green or New Society authors are going, like, asking me, like, wow, that's amazing that you did that. I'm just like, I don't know. It just seemed obvious to me. Amazon can sell your book for $9 less than the list price. And of course, the majority of sales are going to be through Amazon. There's nothing I can do about that, and that's fine. But I just wanted to offer something of value to people for a reasonable price and then get them on my website and get them buying my book from me. And I found that's been great. It's been it means that, I'm not trying to outcompete Amazon in price. I'm outcompeting them in content and quality. So it's not a numbers game, because I know that I probably don't even sell 1/100th of the amount of books that Amazon sells from my website, but it's that little extra something for that person who wants a little bit of extra value and is excited to support the content creator. So that was the main idea for there. And then that became a big lead into all these other things I did, because I kind of discovered the power of web-based marketing and how building a tribe and a community on your site can allow you to do all kinds of other things.
So speaking of building a tribe and a community, you've recently switched how you're delivering information. Do you want to talk a bit about your most recent project?
Yeah. So I started a website called fromthefield.farm. And, I've been a YouTuber for a number of years. I think it's 4 years now. And I really started cranking on YouTube 2 years ago when I started posting like 5 days a week. I did that, and I'm glad I did, but I've kind of gotten tired of the grind in YouTube. One thing no complaints. Like, I'm grateful for YouTube, and I'm grateful for the opportunities that have come my way as a result of my work with it. But I've just realized that there's different types of people out there who want different types of things. People on YouTube generally just want to click through a bunch of videos and find something they're looking for. And then there's other people that want something more. They want highly detailed. Excuse me, I have to let my daughter out for a sec. Just one sec.
So while we're waiting for Curtis to come back there, we're getting to the end of the show here. So why don't we do our book giveaway, Sarah?
Okay, great. Yeah, it was really lovely to see all the comments coming in on the video, and exciting to see people getting engaged. And our winner today is Oswald Spangler.
Great. That's fantastic. So Oswald, if you want to send an email to info@vergepermaculture.ca, and I'll put that in the chat window here once Curtis starts finishes his thought there. We'll send all the information to you regarding how to get access to the book. If you're not in North America, then you can, we send out a digital copy. And if you are in North America, then we send out a physical copy of the book. So congratulations on winning the book. And Kurt, if you want to finish your thought, you were just talking about people wanting different types of things, and that YouTube people generally are just wanting to click through a whole bunch of videos. And so
so the YouTube, it's good in many ways. It's good to bring people in who are generally interested, and then you can kind of funnel them down into something that they identify as something they want more of. And so I just found that, the videos that I put on YouTube that were the most valuable as far as like number of takeaways that could change your operation were the longest videos, but they get no views because the YouTube algorithm just wants clickbait. It wants like flashy titles, flashy thumbnails, short videos with tight edits. And that's fine. That's what it is, right? And I played that game for a while, but it's not me. And so I started to create my own platform. I also I'm a total free speech absolutist. And so I don't like the way some of the platforms are censoring people. And I know like there's not much I can do about it, but I think I would rather be in control of my own voice and have my own platform. So I'm going to stay on YouTube. I'm going to keep posting to YouTube, but I'm going to put the bulk of my work into my own site that I own 100% of. And so that's what FromTheField.farm is. It came out of an idea. I was actually in discussions with TV production companies. I had people from Los Angeles calling me, and they wanted me to do a show, like a traveling food show about farms. And it's an idea that I'd toyed with for a long time. I even had a contract with a company, and I basically bailed because I realized I don't want to be in the entertainment industry. I don't like Hollywood. I don't like what that whole scene is about. And I just realized, hey, how about instead of going at like the Netflix audience, why don't I just offer more value to the small group of people that want it? And then that way I can publish the content that I want, which is long form, unedited, in-depth interviews with amazing growers who are doing innovative and incredible work. That's really what I want to do. And that's what my core audience wants. So this way, with this site, people can basically support me directly. They just buy an annual membership. It's $49 for the founding members price if you get in before January 18th, or it's $4.99 a month. And so it's been going incredibly well. We've got, I think, as of right now, 1,300 people in there. So it's cool and it's exciting, and it's gonna lead to many different things that I never really thought possible.
Awesome. Great. There's been a couple of questions that I want to kind of circle around to, and then we'll close it out for the day. It looks like you've got a young girl that wants your attention, and I'm a dad too. I totally know that
when I can't do. Yeah.
So Wally was an early mentor for you. Were there any other mentors that you had in the early days, and are you still looking for mentors, or do you have mentors in your life right now?
Oh, I have mentors in my life. I've constantly have mentors. Oh yeah. I mean, I had two other farmers, two other pretty old, organic growers. One guy named Bob McCoubry, who was a organic orchardist, 30-year organic orchardist. Another seed saver here in the Okanagan, John Alcock, big mentor of mine. Also, just like in the business community, had a fellow named Sheldon Gardner, who was a real inspiration for me as far as just like managing a business and making the right moves and all that. And yeah, I mean, I still have mentors right now. I mean, I've been really cognizant of who I surround myself with think it was when I read Think and Grow Rich. It kind of got me on that mindset of just surrounding yourself with good people. Like, you know, you're the sum total of the closest 5 people around you. I've really, really followed that. And so ever since I've been on that track, I've removed all toxic people from my life and tried to remove toxic habits and toxic thoughts, and just surround myself with good people and good food and you know, good things. And it's had a significant effect on how I operate. So yeah, still have mentors now. Just hung out with one of them a couple nights ago, gave me probably $1 million idea. So, you know, it's constant. And the way I try to do it is I try to surround myself with 3 types of people. So mentors, people that I want to be like, you know, in 10 years or so, people that are at, you know, in my space. So you would be one of those, like my peer group, and then people that I want to help. And so I always kind of think about that. It's not like I'm counting numbers to make sure I have perfect numbers of the right types of friends, but I just like to think about that I want to be an inspiration for people that I can help motivate and that I see promise in, that I probably put a little bit more elbow grease into helping than I would most. And then people in my friend group, and then people that are mentors to me that I look for inspiration, but I also bring value to them as well. And I think that's an important thing in any relationship, is that, you know, it's a two-way street, that if you're getting value, you're bringing value as well. And I try to not go at somebody like, hey, can you be my mentor? Can you do this for me? It's not like that at all. It's always first, what can I do for you?
Right. Cool. Well, I know you need to get to your daughter there. I just wanted to close with any closing thoughts that you've got, and then we'll close out the show today.
I just want to give a big thanks to Sarah for being here, and New Society. New Society are such an awesome publishing company. They've been nothing but an absolute joy to work with. And I know a lot of authors now, actually, as a result of going and doing a speaking circuit at these like Mother Earth News and stuff like that, and just traveling and being an entrepreneur. And publishing game is rough. It is rough. And I've looked at other contracts, and man, New Society's contract is incredible. Any authors out there that are considering writing, be careful who you go with. But honestly, New Society is, in my opinion, the best in the space. And yeah, really grateful for you, Rob, the early mentorship, the friendship, and everything we've done together. I look forward to hanging out every time and our conversations.
Totally.
So yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks so much, guys. So folks, if you found that valuable, hit the like button. If you're not subscribed and you want to be notified when we go live again, hit the subscribe button. And I've put a link to Curtis's book in the show notes below. You can also find him on YouTube. I think it's Curtis Stone, Urban Farmer, right, Curtis?
Yeah, Urban Farmer, Curtis Stone, any of the combination. And
after the show, I'll put a link to Curtis's membership site if you're interested in getting those longer form pieces of advice. And any other connection points there that you can find for Curtis. Sarah, do you have any closing words before we end the live stream?
I just want to say thank you to Curtis for those kind words. You, the authors, Rob and Curtis, you're what makes this job so great, and to be able to share your knowledge, I just think it's really awesome. And it's really great to finally get to meet some of our authors, even if it's just virtually. So just hope everybody has a great day and is inspired to go out and do what makes them feel good.
Awesome. So if you're on our newsletter list, you're going to get a coupon for 25% off the book for the next 48 hours. And we'll see you guys in the next show. Thanks, Curtis. Thanks, Sarah. Have a great day.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. You too.